Hello to everybody, and thank you very much for coming today. We have a super luxury panel with us today. I am the CEO of YBVR, and we are the company that is changing the way we are enjoying sports. We have a technology who streams virtual reality with maximum resolution when you are looking at, getting like photo quality, like retina quality, photorealistic images. And doing so, having more pixel resolution where you look that on the rest, we get the quality 4 times better with half of the bandwidth. So I encourage you to have a look to the booth tomorrow when the exhibition starts. But today, we are going to discuss about not much on technology, but mainly on the business side of that. And having worked already for a while in the sport tech ecosystem, we thought it was a kind of very, very interesting topic to discuss what is the money, how engaging fans with this immersive technology, VR, AR, XR, is gonna make money. So on that, I think we have the best people we can have to discuss about it. I would like we discuss mainly 4 aspects, mainly from the business point of view. First of all, is what is fan engagement? What are the today's application? Not only what's going to happen in 3 years or in 8 years from now, that for sure evolution of technology is there, but things that are happening today and next year on engagement fans with these immersive technologies today. Second, I like to discuss very much about the consumer point of view, what produced that engagement. Third, I would like to understand or to discuss how we transform this engagement into monetization, into real business generation machine. And finally, I like from the business point of view, but what are the technological challenges? What are the bottlenecks? Why is not happening today, right? So with these 4 topics, let's start introducing who have here. And if you allow me, I'm gonna read very quickly the bios of my colleagues. We have Mounir here, who was born and raised in Beirut. Mounir is a world citizen who is passionate about sports, technology, and entrepreneurship and innovation. He has more than 15 years experience in the sports industry, the latest of which has been to be a director of technology and innovation at the US Olympic Committee. It's because of him that the Olympic team won such amount of medals, I guess.
Team effort.
Team effort, of course. Today, he advised several emerging technology companies, and he's the co-founder and managing director of Next Exporting. Close to him, we have Sandra Lopez. Sandra Lopez is the VP for Intel Sports, responsible for partnering with the sports industry to deliver the next generation storytelling platform, the immersive media. She leads the business, marketing, and market development efforts of Intel Sports and Intel Studios. Previously, she led the fashion wearable business in Intel, and earlier in her career, she led various roles within corporate and consumer marketing. She earned a number of highly recognized awards in the industry, and as part of contributing to the community, she's focused on building the next generation of female leaders, participating in a number of organizations with different roles. Thank you very much, Sandra. Close to Sandra, we have George Foster, who is a professor of management at the Stanford University Graduate School of Business, where he teaches sport business management, sport investment, and sport marketing. By the way, it's fantastic lessons. I have the honor to participate in some of them, and I really recommend it. He has led 2 World Economic Forum reports, Davos 2011, Davos 2014. He has been chairman of the World Economic Forum Global Agenda Council of Entrepreneurship and sits at the board of important companies in technology. He has directed programs for NFL and NBA and presented a number of industry conferences such as World Congress of Sports. He has written a book with Bill Walsh, The Business of Sports. And George is Doctor of Honoris Causa in Economics by the University of Ghent in Belgium, and Honorary Doctor of Economic Science by University of Vaasa in Finland. Nothing more. And finally, Louisa. Louisa Spring. Louisa Spring, as CEO of Vari, she's focused on immersive gaming experience and esports in locations around the world. Lawyer, producer, entrepreneur, Louisa has worked in a number of award-winning VR companies. As a TV producer, Louisa has worked with Far More, The Fall acquired by Endemol, and Roger Moore, 007. She's former member of the board of BAFTA and Practice Law in London. So thank you to all of them for coming here. Let's start with you, Mounir. I mean, you have been traveling the world. You have seen everything in technology and sports. And I'd like you to comment a little bit what let's say in the last 3 months, which kind of technologies and application of technologies capture your attention, either because they have a kind of direct monetization path into business, or perhaps because they are more than a wow effect, that is something that represents a sustainable fun experience. And first, please talk a little bit about you. What are you doing at the moment? Just
sure.
a minute.
Is my microphone on? Can you hear me? Okay. Now it's on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me back there? Okay. So at Next Sports, we work with sports organizations, teams, clubs, leagues, and we help them understand what does the sports of the future look like and help them address some of the biggest challenges that they have around technology. Some common questions that come out of such organizations are, what does the athlete of the future look like? What does the coach of the future look like? What does it mean to show up for a training session? What does the fan of the future look like? What do the rules of the game look like? What should we be thinking about? And what are those technology trends that are coming our way? And how do we position ourselves not only to monetize, but also gain a competitive edge? In the sports industry, every Sunday is a big day in any sport almost. And that Sunday, you have to win. And if you win, then your brand value grows. And if your brand value grows, then you're happy. You've got more followers and so on. I'd say that the two, if I focus the conversation on like VR, AR, XR, whatever we want to call this domain, the two main categories of challenges or questions that have been coming our way have been underneath sort of the athlete performance or competitive edge from an athletic perspective, and then the business side. From the performance side, the question is, how can we leverage this kind of technology to provide injured athletes with the capability of training even though they can't move, right? How can we stimulate the brain? How can we create that cognitive connection between the athlete and her sport, knowing that she cannot be out on the field, she cannot be in the bobsled, she cannot be on her skis, she cannot be in the pool. The other type of questions is more on the business side, right? What do our fans look like, right? My older kid, he's 12 years old. So the questions that the sports or brands are asking themselves is, how can they capture his business when he has then the power to purchase and when he has the power to decide where is he going to be spending his money? What does that fan engagement look like? What are some of the tools that we can use today, and how do we equip ourselves with strategies, and how do we execute on those? Those, I would say, are the two most common threads.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course.
So Sandra, I'd like again you comment a little bit of what keeps you busy at the moment.
Yes.
For a number of things. And also from your experience in your work with NBA, with NFL, with La Liga, on immersive experience, what in your view is generating fun engagement from the consumer point of view? And in particular with this NBA, NFL, and La Liga, what is the money? Right. Where is the money? How the technology innovation is transforming into tangible business, right? What is happening today is an effort to build the future, or there is already business model associated to this year and next year activity around XR?
That's a lot of questions.
Sorry for that.
No, that's
one by one.
Yeah, one by one. So at Intel, we're really committed to not discussing the future, but building the future. But to build the future, you need to understand that technology as a whole is based on evolution. And if you think about telephones, right? It took 25 years to get 10% market penetration. Technology began to accelerate, and then you had smartphones where you reached 40% penetration in 10 years. And similarly, like technology continues to adopt. So when you're looking at Intel, when we're looking at building the futures, we're looking at the intersection of the future of the fan and where technology is going and delivering those experiences. And so it's important to really understand fans and what's happening with the fan. And while there's a lot of headlines around the fan is decreasing, the fan isn't decreasing. What's happening is we're competing for share of time. Time is the most important commodity that exists. We're all mobile. We all have to be on 24/7. We work. Most nowadays families have 2 working parents. So then what does it mean in terms of you no longer have, on Sundays, when I was growing up with my father, I had all day to watch Sunday football. And now, as a working parent, I don't. So then you start to look at different platforms. You use Twitter for real-time updates. You're going to look at Instagram and Snapchat to be accessible. I mean, a lot of consumers now, agnostic of age, want authenticity, right? It's get me closer to that athlete. Help me understand who or she is. And then you have YouTube, and like, I want to go replay that amazing Game 3 iconic LeBron throw that happened with the Raptors. And then you also want to do TV. Everybody's like, TV's not important. It is, and the thing is that consumers are looking at content, multiple channels, in multiple ways, how they would like to view it. So the whole notion of personalization becomes really important. And you think about, we are at a VR conference. VR is playing a critical role. And so yes, you have the head-mounted displays, but you're also getting VR and 2D mobile displays as well. And so I go back to the history of technology and the evolution, and there seems like this strong desire for the tech to be available today. And it takes time with the entire ecosystem. It takes the headset manufacturers, it requires the league and the content providers and the content right holders. It requires the engineers that are building the next generation of experiences, broadcast rights holders, new generation of storytelling. You're no longer telling stories in linear, right? We had some NBA broadcasters highlight the notion that you are now telling the story as if the fan is actually there live. And that means telling the story differently. You now have viewpoints that are infinite views that you never had before. And so all of this needs to come together for immersive media to realize. So you have the ecosystem and then the fans. It's just a matter of time. It's not, if, but when, and you're going to start to see the intersection.
Very good. I like this. No longer storytelling is linear. I think that's something that we start to really touch.
Yes, and it's not easy. It takes a different mindset and a different approach because consumers are going to have that personal, they're going to choose the viewpoints that they want. And so broadcast storytelling becomes extremely different, and thinking about that, and what does that mean for the storytellers, and what does that mean for the fan, and bringing it together, I think is an exciting time that we're in.
Are these technologies only for the younger generations?
No, my perspective and our perspective is that it's not gender bias. It's basically based on your personal preference and your interest in sports or your interest in the particular content. So it's about, consumers are much more complex. It's about attitudes and behaviors. It's not necessarily based on demographics.
But not only for kids?
Look, you find some of us like at home wearing the headsets. I mean, we've done some research and we were surprised that a lot of 35 North are wearing headsets. Now you can argue it's because of economics, but it's really about an individual's desire and technology adoption. Over time, if you think about the older generation, start to adopt smartphones, right? And they can't live with Facebook anymore. So it's just, it's not about age, it's just about your personal interest and passion points.
Very good, very good. Okay, George. For me, you're the voice of the business. Perhaps nobody like you understands the business ecosystems around sports in this country. After providing a view of what you are doing on immersive technologies or where you are focused at the moment on that, I'd like to comment 3 questions. First is, who in your view is going to be the driver of this technology? Is it going to be the leagues? Is it going to be the venues, the professional teams? Are going to be the broadcasters? Who you think is going to do the first step into that, or who is already doing the first step into that? The second is more the chicken and egg type of question. And in your view, is the massive adoption of the headsets and the smart glasses and all these kind of things, who is going to drive business, or on the opposite, are the willingness of these drivers positioning in the technology who are going to drive, is sport going to drive the mass adoption of headsets? That probably because it's a content that you don't have to produce only to capture, and that's also a lot of value. And the third one is in the average aging of the fan communities in the sport, is the motivation of the ecosystem to go immersive because of this aging, or nothing to do with it?
Okay, I'll try and address some of those issues on that, but just a generic question of revenue side, which is what Hector sort of asked me to address. I think of revenue in three ways. One is new revenue streams coming into a sport. So I'm working with the Green Bay Packers. They have revenues about $440 million. This is all public because of the stature of the Green Bay Packers. But new revenues would take, say, the sponsorship revenues, say 170 to 190 or something like that. And I do think actually there's a potential for the sponsors to find this is an attractive thing, not necessarily on game day, but to a whole lot of other fans out there. And something like what Barcelona or Real Madrid does with their membership of 100 million or whatever it is. I mean, American sports haven't done that as much and embrace their fan base, and I think the technology has a chance to do that. I think technology has also got a role in protecting the existing revenue streams, and I think the big danger is that you implement all this work with technology and expect the revenue streams to dramatically increase. I think the fight is keeping engagement up with higher expectations of new technologies, but fans not necessarily willing to pay for that. And if you look at the evolution of the smartphone, the number of features keeping on being added to those smartphones is incredible, and the price points, if anything, are coming down. And so that's a real dilemma in this industry. Another one is, in fact, keeping the athletes on the field. So what attracts people to the sporting base is the athletes themselves. And so what was being pronounced by Mounir is all these technologies to sort of keep athletes healthy, faster recuperation. That's keeping the stars on the field, which is a very important part of the revenue base. So I don't buy this idea that we've got the playing side, which is sort of not the revenue base, but we have the business side. I think they're very intertwined, and health of athletes is central.
Very good point.
Couple of concerns that I think you should work around straight away. One is, when you think of what do the fans want to see, a lot of it's access to the athletes, either in virtual reality or augmented reality, and that's not going to come free. I know Visa initially started to do a little bit of this with a sponsorship in the NFL, and they're able to get Tom Brady to do something. That was not charged out first time. That is not going to be charged out free next time. The players are too smart to sort of think that they're the central part of a central part of the ecosystem and not want, just as in the other player revenue sharing agreements, a central role in this. And as virtual reality or augmented reality gives them even greater say in this, greater brands, that's going to be an important aspect. Do it now. Don't do it in the law fights, or don't do it in terms of contentious agreements with NFLPA or NBAPA. Second thing is, don't underestimate fans' expectations of reality on this. I know EA, when they put out, initially when they were doing some basketball games, they had basketball players with tattoos. A lot of fans said, that player's tattoos are not the real tattoos. And that fan knew exactly what those tattoos were, and EA has to go back to the player. Some of them knew how they got the tattoos because they're in a different zone when they got them. But that's the sort of thing. The fans, don't underestimate how smart those fans are and what their expectations are. A third thing is, if we look at the revenue model of the arenas, the revenue of the arenas is the front 10 rows, or whatever you want to put it, may get 40% of the revenue base. As you start to create virtual augmented reality, what you're trying to do is bring all those people, and we're going to have Oracle on Thursday night. The Warriors and going to people up there in the top deck of that thing, what we call bird's eye view, those ticket prices yesterday were selling for about $800. In the front row, not the front row, they're about 40,000. The front row around them is about 3,000. Okay, what you're going to do is reduce the distance between the experience at the top level and the experience at the bottom level, which may create a lot of problems for the revenue models of arenas on that. And I think that, again, don't wait till it happens. Think about it in advance, how you're going to do that. And I think the last one, and this is one of which I actually think the more creative uses of virtual and actual reality is not through putting things on your face, but with smartphones and things like that. Because I think part of the experience of sports is communal. And it's very hard if everybody's got their headsets on and sort of look at each other and sort of bumping into each other's heads, things like that. So the communal aspect of sport is the heart and soul of the sports, of why people go to it, why they go to sports bars, and how can you enhance that communal experience rather than make them more isolated.
But I think from a technology perspective, various companies understand that social is a critical element to sports. So it's may not be in today's technology, but from a roadmap perspective is how do you define social in the world of virtual reality when you may still have a headset on? And so that is being comprehended and addressed, and look forward to the future.
Yeah.
For me, that's one of the biggest challenges in the technology today, how we do this immersion social in a friendly way.
Do you have a strip going down where you have the social media coming in as well as the content?
Right.
Okay. But yeah, thank you very much, George. I like very much that it's not only the new revenue streams, and I mean, this is my business, and today I am spend more time with customers who try to protect their current revenue, so that want to get in the technology position to protect what they are having. And as I think for me, in all the cycles of technology I've lived so far, is first is protection of existing business, and then finding where is the new business on that, and something important to remind. Okay, thank you very much, George. And Louisa, please, I mean, tell us what are those amazing projects you are working now on esports. I have to say that everything I hear about esports is going to be big. It's already big. It's disturbing. It's disrupting a lot. It's generating figures and timings that we are not used to. And probably because of my age, it's difficult for me to understand the dynamics. So it would be great that you transport us of what is already happening in the esports. And I put like 3 topics or 3 questions for you. Is what immersive technologies could bring into the esports? I mean, today I'm not sure that there is a lot of immersive technologies on that. You can tell us, but what they can bring, and if you can describe 1 or 2 use cases where you see that there is a monetization path of the immersive technologies, it would be great. And I'd like to finish from what you have seen. What captured your attention? What do you think that's something to follow? Okay, Louisa, the floor is yours.
I love the way you throw all these questions at us. It's fantastic. Yeah, so esports are big. I just came back from Birmingham at the arena. They had the ESL 1 with Dota 2, and it was 18,000 seats sold out in 24 hours. So it was a massive event. I was actually so proud because that is my home city, Birmingham, even though I live in LA right now. And in fact, I am opening our first gaming clubhouse in Birmingham. There's a reason for that, actually, is that my father was the head of Atari in the West Midlands, so he had the Atari Center there. So I've been involved in gaming since I was probably the first girl gamer, actually. Anyway. Also, when you look at these things, you have to look at demographics, et cetera, and 45% of Birmingham is under the age of 25. You have an incredible catchment area. And within the kind of gaming clubhouses, what we will be doing is holding the esports tournaments, but we will also be having VR esports tournaments and VR and AR attractions within it. And some of the kind of interesting kind of sports-themed ones are, there's one called Virtual Soccer Zone, which is coming out, that is a multiplayer. There are some 8v8 multiplayer games out there. And I think that VR esports will actually take off as well, not at the same rate, but certainly if we get people comfortable with the headsets and comfortable playing the game and encouraging them to play the game, I think that could be big. I think, when you look as well about what you're going to put into these arenas, that's interesting what you were saying earlier, George, by the way. I'll have to pick your brain too. But, you know, I like kind of real-time data visualization of what people are doing within the game. I've seen Max Media do that in Atlanta. It was, you know, quite incredible. It was like real-time data analytics coming up on screens within the stadium. But also, from an AR perspective, I've also seen phones being used to see player stats on the, and I'm not talking in regular sports because I'm really rubbish at that, but I mean, on esports, I have seen them looking at real-time stats overlaid on the players on the stage. And I think there is monetization in that. I also think, obviously, the biggest monetization is obviously gambling, which will probably, you know, be led by crypto. And I couldn't even begin to start on that, but I do know a few companies that are doing that right now. You know, I think what's the next thing? I think personalization in gaming is really big. Right now, you can go in VR and be within the game in Dota 2, which is really super interesting because you're kind of in there and all the players are rushing around you and they're like life-size characters and it's quite overwhelming actually. And I think you'll see a lot more of people working out how to follow each player. Obviously, I couldn't sit here and not mention Fortnite and 100 million that is their prize pool now. The tournament I went to was 1 million, which, you know, was a big number for a tournament, to be honest, in the UK. But 100 million prize pool with Fortnite, you know, people are going to start working out how to be in VR in that game and actually working out how to follow which players within the battle royale. So those are
you see
kind of some of the things.
Not that much for the players, but for the spectators.
Yeah, they are already doing it in Dota 2 right now.
And do you see that the spectators using wearing the headsets at the venue or at home?
Oh, at home, at home. In the venue, though, in the venue, what I do believe is, as far as LBE and location-based entertainment, I do believe there is a place for that there if it is kind of sports-related or it's really fun. I mean, Modal, for example, is a fun game that's really simple for families. As I said, Orwell VR do virtual soccer zone that was at Roma that had all the families like playing soccer against each other, and it was all branded. So, you know, that is fun within the stadium, and I think the phone is going to be really important, and AR within the stadium with stats.
Very good, very good. So it's interesting to see the different angles, and for me, this eSports is really putting the trend on where we will extract maximum value of the immersive technology. So we still have like 12 minutes. What I suggest now is to go in a round of very short questions, 30 seconds questions. I try to be a little bit provocative, and I appreciate that any of you jump onto that, even two of you. But let's try to be very, very short in the answer. And then we will have, at the end, a little bit time for the audience also to do questions. So this immersive technology in sports is for live or for VOD?
Both. Let the consumer choose. So some consumers or some fans want to watch it live, and some fans want to see live and have access to content that traditional broadcasters are not delivering. So I don't think it's either or, it's an and ultimately the fan will choose.
Other views?
I would say that no, you're bringing new experiences, right? And if someone is available to watch it real time, they're gonna use it real time. If not, you know, who knows what the Netflix or the zone of the future looks like.
Replays, highlights,
you know?
behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You mean, I think on the replays, you mean what could have been? Had certain things not happened?
Well, I was just thinking, you know, sometimes when you're watching highlights of a match or whatever, you might watch that in VR. I don't know. I think live is probably good because there's a feeling of being there. But
my view is live has to be there because of marketing purpose. Is what I mean. In sports, if it is not live, it doesn't exist. But at the end, the consume is going to be more like, I want to see that from this other angle. I want to see that again.
I think for esports as well, because it's a global audience, and we're already watching it on Twitch, and we're already watching it, you know, together on Twitch as well. So if you can work that out for esports, and you can have the social side of that within VR, which I think you can have 15 people in actually that Dota 2 game. But if you can sort that out within VR, I think it would be quite good for them. I think they would like that.
It was interesting, there was a fan that was talking about liking to watch the live sports, but now with these new technologies, he can break down the film. Like, he is now a person that's breaking down the film, and he's an inspiring athlete. And so understanding and getting angles that you can never see before, getting up close and personal from a VR perspective, is also going to transform how kids train to become these next generation athletes. So I think, yes, you need to have live, but you need to probably deliver both.
The live is a platform,
Yeah.
a platform for other people to come in and look at it at different angles and that. So even the live is central, but I think we're going to see more significant revenue stream in post-live.
Very good. A little bit more than 30 seconds, but it was really, really interesting. VR cinemas, or VR zones. One of our last jobs was in the Open Tennis of Madrid, Master 1000. We were hired to create a VR cinema within the venue. And I thought that in the States, with all the money that is in the venues, that could be really big. Question here. Will be a business in itself, or will be just a brand activation? What do you think?
I think that's an activation in my...
Yeah, I think it's more brand activation. You see some of this going on in motorsports at the high end, at F1, but in NASCAR, they're attempting to do that. But I don't think fans sort of see, they pay a certain amount, and they know the sponsors are trying to do that to sell cars. And I think they accept that, but I'm sure they pay extra money.
I do agree. I do agree. And I think in some sense it's like it used to be the internet cafe, where the internet was not at home. Internet cafes were driving that and was creating awareness. And I think this is going to create awareness where the fans are. That's a little bit my view. So I think this question was done before, but let's talk about, was done before, let's say, in one of the big panels. But let's talk about sports. 2019 is the year of AR, or the year augmented reality, or virtual reality, or none of them? Mounir?
I would say it's going to be still virtual reality, and I don't think augmented reality is here yet in a reliable fashion. You know, I'm thinking about it from a performance perspective, right? I mean, Sandra brought up a very good point earlier on. Athletes today train very differently from athletes of the past, right? And there's lots of talk around how do we accelerate the learning curve of athletes, and how do we identify talent in a quicker fashion. Virtual reality tends to give coaches and athletes a magnificent new view onto the sport that they've never had before. Do they want augmented reality solutions? Maybe not yet. Maybe they don't even know what to do with it yet, right? But I'd say 2019, a bit more growth in VR. Very good. Any other vision?
I think that the athletes actually are going to embrace VR and AR. Increasingly, we're seeing individual brands associated with the athletes themselves. That's certainly a trend in the last 15 years. I think of the US sports, basketball has done a better job than most of them in terms of transforming them. And I think they're tech savvy enough that they will be embracing this as part of their brand enhancement.
Yeah, they've already embraced esports, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, a lot of them own teams now. Yeah. I want to have a female team, though.
It's going to come, but, you know, you sort of go to the events, and it's a little depressing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who's on the front?
That's right.
3 killer applications into the XR world for sports. 3 killer applications we have to identify here. Let's go for them.
I would say, and thinking about athletes, AR-enabled solutions to create safer training environments and more effective training environments. I'm thinking about cycling. You know, when I was still with the U.S. Olympic team, we were working with the U.S. cyclists to help them create a competitive edge with respect to everyone else on the planet. And they were using AR solutions as they were training, so they didn't have to look down onto the handlebar of the bike where they had a small screen, because they were very, very close to the bike in front of them. And any distraction was an accident. Any accident was, you eliminate the athlete from the competition at that point.
Training in cycling. Good. We have one. Other.
I have, so one is what we call volumetric video, and what it does, it breaks down, you capture one and you have infinite angles, and you saw that from when the Super Bowl with Tom Brady that we brought into it. It was really fascinating because everybody thought we actually had a camera within the helmet, and we didn't. So think about, my colleague Preston Phillips uses this analogy. Imagine that you're a bumblebee. You can go into any arena or any venue, and you can look at it from any perspective that you would choose. I think that is going to be a killer experience, and that's not related to head-mounted display. It could be on your mobile, and then you bring volumetric and VR together, and it is a game changer.
I agree. A new one?
I actually think you've got to distinguish between killer technology and killer business-wise. And I think on the killer business-wise, I still like the idea of athletes having OTTs themselves almost.
Yeah.
And just as we see in YouTube, the YouTube channels, I can envision that. It's got to be a nightmare in terms of how you allocate the rights between the Players Association, the individual athletes, and the leagues, but in terms of footage and that. But that to me is where there's upside, and there's several agents automatically onto this already.
And I would add artificial intelligence. Can you imagine being able to curate video akin to Spotify? So what Spotify has been doing for music and streaming, to adding AI with all that video would be pretty impressive.
But the question is, Sandra, who owns the rights to those videos?
Yeah.
And we know who's going to come in strong. It's going to be the broadcasters and the leagues.
The leagues.
Okay, I have plenty of other questions, but we have 4 minutes to go, and I would like to open the floor for questions, and if anybody is wanting to address any of the panelists with any question.
You can go ahead and start with those.
Yeah, so how are developers improving UX so far as giving users controls of ambient lighting, head-mounted displays? For example, affects quality to the digital image of our classes? I don't know who wants to take that question.
I'll stay on this.
No.
I would say, at Intel, we spend a lot of time on user behavior and UX, and it's interesting because it goes back to my earlier comment. With these emerging technologies, you can't apply the traditional methods, and you have to reframe and rethink what is user behavior in head-mounted displays, and think about all the opportunities. And I know the issue is around quality, but a lot of it goes back to the manufacturers have to advance their hardware. So it goes back to software, hardware, being able to complement each other to improve quality. There's a whole buffering issue. What do you do when you have a head-mounted display and you're trying to do a 360? All of that you need to put into consideration. So UX and UX design is very different from digital. And you have to go find those individuals that understand what is UX design in the world of immersive media.
Agreed. Fantasy. What about augmented reality-based fantasy games to engage sport fans?
I love this one. Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, Louisa.
I really love it. Actually, I showed a character from Overwatch where you could actually, and I showed it to a friend of mine in a bar, and you could actually change the skin of it in AR on the bar. And he said to me, why aren't we doing the fighter games on the bar right now where your phone can recognize my phone and we can just do an AR fighter game on the bar? And, you can do that actually. So, publishers out there, give me a call.
Louisa, in the esports, we're seeing this dichotomy between shooter games and traditional, what we call sports games, basketball. What's your forecast in terms of the relative power base of those two angles? Because one's got leagues behind them, one's got computer games behind them.
Well, one has been around for a long time, as we discussed earlier, and I think some of the other ones, like the NBA 2K and FIFA, haven't been around as long as Overwatch and Dota 2 and CSGO that have been played in Korea for years and years. But those games are going to be just as big. I mean, they definitely will. So, and with any of these events that you're doing, I think AR is such a great thing to have at an event anyway, whether it be an esports event where you're playing a game against people within the audience, an AR game, or you are, you know, doing it in a regular sports game. I really feel that it's really good.
Very good. Is there any other question from the audience? That's a very good one. How many sport viewers enjoy live VR currently? Does anybody of you have a clue of that?
I mean, we don't disclose the numbers. Absolutely, I mean, you see all the numbers from the analysts with regards to head-mounted display penetration. So it's currently relatively low, but I think over time it goes back to the market penetration.
Do we have an idea of head-mounted display market penetration in the US? That should be public, right?
There's multiple, I mean, there's multiple stats out there, so it depends on, you know, what data you want to use.
Okay, good. And
Let's make this the final one, and then we'll get on to the next.
Okay, the final one is, what augmented reality stadiums applications have traction providing player detection, analytics, mini games, etc.? And I don't know who is going to answer this.
I actually haven't seen any yet, to be honest, but I think they're coming. So you would know if they're coming, right?
There are some apps, not necessarily AR. I define them like fan engagement apps that that many venues here in the U.S. and outside are using, to manage online ticketing, purchase of food and beverage, delivery of food and beverage, watching highlights, parking. I mean, it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, wayfinding should be, in most of these places and driving people to certain areas.
Yeah.
That should certainly be there, and I hope that they actually start doing that.
I think it's going to be huge.
The technology is there. It's just bringing everything together because you have like Venue Next, who has some of the venue capabilities, and then you could argue has the cameras, and it's just starting to bring the integration over time. So it's just
each of the major new stadium constructions and the stadium arena reconfigurations have got that as a central part of their portfolio of offerings.
A lot of business around the stadium. I'm completely convinced on that. So I would like to ask for a big applause to the panel. I think it has been a great view of different angles of the business.